Ever felt like an imposter in this hobby? Ever feel like things have drifted, as far as trends, really far from where your tastes are, where you'd like things to be as far as how people play at the table and which games they're choosing to play? Let me just check if this other camera's on. Oh yeah, it is. Well, that's me right now. I'm really far out of joint. And is there even a table for me to be at? And the reason that I tell you this right now is because I'm a preacher that hasn't prayed in a long while. And the point of this channel, the reason that I got started in this game of YouTube, is to talk with other folks who are trying to grow and deepen their faith that this is the kind of thing they want to do and discover more about what is their taste. And talk frankly with other folks that are growing and open-minded about where things could go. So I don't have a whole lot of room to talk there. I haven't played face-to-face since 2016. I haven't played online since 2020, and we'll get into each one of those things. But the point is, the reason I haven't posted, the reason that there's not a whole lot going on this channel is because I don't have much business getting up behind a lectern and telling you about this hobby. Because I'm an imposter. I don't know much about it, and folks would have a long way to go to come to where I'm at, and I'm a long way from folks. And I don't know how those two places are going to come back together again. A little bit of background. The reason that we're having this talk right now, the reason that I'm being as frank as I am with you, is because I got that email in the mail that the YouTube Partner Program is going to discontinue me, and I'm not going to get any more money from ads on the videos that I've done. I'm not going to get any more remuneration for all the work that I put into motion graphics and studying things and digging into stuff and putting up with comments and being a target of some very strange right-wing stuff one time, including some weird anti-Semitic comments and stuff. But we don't need to talk about that. This video is not about that. But, you know, YouTube takes work. It has costs. If you want to put in the work to do kind of original stuff that nobody else is doing, which is one of my biggest goals on this channel, well, I've had a lot of lost faith because if you don't recall, H-Bomber did this video about plagiarism and how basically people who copy and steal other people's work on this website, they get away with it, just universally. And they even are the most successful, are the thieves. And we all know there's been algorithm changes and it gets harder to find highbrow content. It's harder to find stuff that's related to your interests because you're getting shoved weird stuff and so on. And now, in 2025, we have to keep into account that when I upload a video, I'm also going to be providing free training to Google Gemini or whatever. I'm training the robots. And there's not any remuneration for that. Somebody will tell me, somebody in the comments will say, well, that's the price of getting your video for free on this hosted on this website for free. And yeah, that's okay, but I didn't agree to that. And frankly, I don't. And the goal is to replace expert knowledge, which is frankly what Game Master Growth and the Complex Games Apologist before it, previous name of this channel, that's what it was. It was expert knowledge. Kind of not necessarily entertainment. And so I gotta acknowledge that's the deal has changed. Pray I don't alter it any further. So when I started, I was kind of on the margins. My ideal audience was a journeyman hobbyist, somebody who'd already grown into the hobby and was ready to try new things, ready to look critically at the way things were, the way their table was, and look at where the ideal table and the kind of games they wanted to grow into, how they might get there. And the people in my audience that I imagined were open to a variety of games. And this came in the context that Complex Games, which is the name of the channel originally, were receding. Now for me that meant games that had a game state, frankly, that wasn't based on the entertainment or the interpersonal dynamics of the people at the table as much as it was a real moment within the imagined world. And symmetrical games, games where the game master plays characters in the worlds that go by the same rules and operate on similar mechanics to the player characters, those were also receding in favor of sort of the game master as an operator of the entire Oz machine. So, another facet of this is that the new GM intro pipeline and the temptation, the sweet morsel of becoming a GM, as it was evangelized by demagogues and people talking to newbies, was all about entertaining your friends and being a scintillating individual, Matt Mercer, Dimension 20, etc., those guys, and being a razzle-dazzler, as opposed to someone who invites you to fall through the looking glass into Alice's Wonderland, that is looking to create an other personal journey, that you get to be somebody else, walk a mile in someone else's shoes. Those sorts of ideas were receding in favor of fun. Just plain fun. Fun for fun's sake. And, that also means a rejection of difficulty and, bad stuff happening and stuff. But, this video is not about that. So, I haven't played face-to-face. When 2016 was the year, I was a new parent, and I generally don't keep a ton of friends. And if you've ever been a new parent, that your friends don't call you, and your partner is also a new parent, for many of us who are in a two-person relationship. And so you're trying to support each other, and that also means you generally don't leave the house a great deal. And you certainly are not hosting the game unless you have a heck of a lot more help than we had. I was also tired of Pathfinder, of hour-long combats, and I was already kind of souring on 5e because I think that the experiences are crafted to be pretty repetitive, as in, like, your table is going to go a lot like my table. It's going to go a lot like their table over there, because the powers on the character sheets outrank gold pieces, magic items, most other things in the world as far as what's decisive. And that means that the engagement with particular worlds, places, monsters, treasures, gold pieces doesn't actually affect how characters and parties approach situations a great deal, in the sense that, like, I can give you advice about which cleric spells to use and what the best way to approach a combat against wights is as a level 3 party, and pretty much all that stuff is going to be ironclad regardless of the 5e game, unless you're playing with some interesting house rules. That's that crafting a story embedded into the mechanics of the game, which Chris Perkins has copped to. He's very clear that that's actually their goal. And there was also rising entertainment expectations from face-to-face game masters, because people who are new to the hobby, the kind of folks that you meet at the friendly local game store, kind of people that you might invite who were just trying things out or were lapsed or just new to the hobby and wanted to try it out, their impressions were derived from Critical Role and so on, as far as how things would go and how fun it would be and how much we would approach things from the angle of trying to stay within the rules and the imagined world, as opposed to what would be fun or what would be cool. So I was getting pretty far away from the Beltway. So fishing for the game that I want will be pretty hard, or maybe I'd have to put up with games that I'm really just not a huge fan of and are not to my taste. Listen, I know there are other regions in the world, especially the UK, where people play other RPGs and they're not super prejudiced towards Dungeons and Dragons, and where this is true of just everybody. New and old gamers alike, they're more open-minded. I live in the Dungeons and Dragons heartland of the Midwest, and boy, it's pretty hard. And, also people are constantly trying to shove other genres and other ideas into the D&D box, even though it's not a good fit. And that's a discussion that I really don't want to spend my time having face-to-face, and I'm very tired of having it on the internet where I have to prove every time that system matters and that D&D is not the game to play every sort of role-playing experience within. I take it as a given because it's something that I've experienced, and also, like, it shouldn't it be obvious? This video's not about winning that argument, though, but that argument takes effort. And another piece of effort in the face-to-face game world is the constant turnover. You know, half the people flake out, and you have to do all this interpersonal stuff, which frankly, as a neurodiverse person, is pretty taxing unless you've got like a buddy that handles a good deal of it for you. So if you are GMing, if you're hosting, if you're world building, if you're doing other stuff at the same time, as you also have to do the interpersonal cat herding to make things happen, boy, it really is a big overhead, and you're not sure if the game's going to happen. You're not sure if it's going to be any fun for anybody in the meantime, including yourself. And that's a big investment that I haven't been able to make. The opportunity costs and the risks around that have been difficult. And, you know, COVID happened, and nowadays, like, does the FLGS have people playing in it for me to meet any longer? I guess I could go to a convention and see how that goes. If there's any organized play programs that are even going anymore, I guess I could just run a game and see if anybody signs up for it, see how that goes. All of which, you know, my goal is to get to a weekly game, to get to a place where I'm spending time with my hobby once a week. Which brings me back around to playing online. I started the channel, and way back when I was posting my videos on G+, and I had no intention of monetizing, and I wasn't really super serious, and YouTube was only starting to be something that you could look for remuneration on, and also it's the only place where the audience was only beginning to expect coherence from videos back in 2016. Notwithstanding, I fell in with some really great people, first among which was Aloy. He saw my stuff, and he asked me about trying to get together to play a game, and we started trying to do that. And some abortive stuff with random Discord people, and very quickly I fell in with some of the best people I've ever played games with, and people who similarly wanted to grow and were willing to be introspective and, you know, somewhat openly critical of the game system, or also to give game systems an honest try and see how a game system actually could work at the table or bring to life new experiences. And also the role-playing thing, which you know, in the face-to-face world, not so many people are actually looking to become their character and to share that soul with that little person inside the box. It's somewhat rarer, but there's some good dose of that I ran into also, and that was all really good. But here's the thing: the people that I was playing with had more personal liberty than me. The people that I was playing with had more personal liberty than me. The people that I was playing with had more personal liberty than me. They had other games and other nights. And so when something comes up, when somebody has to do something else, when folks are tired because it was a weeknight and stuff, it was very easy for those folks to say, oh, let's put it off. Let's not play this week. Now, meanwhile, I only have this one night a week that I can really earn and make happen with my family, and it has to be scheduled ahead of time. Like, that's the preference in my house, is that you got to know when things come up. And you can't spontaneously just run off and do something fun. So within those preferences and that orientation, I was pretty let down because I can't play a different game on a different night of the week because we canceled this week. Like I'm pre-excluded from those other things that I might spontaneously go to instead, because I'm not going to be able to give my 1 week request time off. So I walked away from that group in 2020 because I wanted to make sure that I was doing the hobby once a week. At this point, I was pretty devoted to the channel, and I wanted to make the channel authentic and true about someone who was trying to grow as a game master and outside the Beltway RPGs or settings. Well, I ran into some trouble finding any folks that had that similar kind of thought and those interests. There's some things about virtual tabletop that I've spoken about in other places that I think are fraught and really run at cross purposes to my preferences. You have to preload everything into the virtual tabletop, and you have to premeditate a lot of your encounters and your environments and so on. You can't just walk away from the preparation and expect to be able to do things quickly, because you got to have like the 5 stormtroopers loaded in, and you got to have your battle map loaded in, and so on. And for me, being pretty accustomed to using wet erase markers and opening up the monster manual and paging to the right page and ad hocking, and just like at one point in my life, I knew the stat blocks for most 3.5 monsters, and I knew most of the feats as I added hit dice to them. And like I could make a young adult green dragon and make a unique one off the top of my head at one point. That is just not doable in the virtual tabletop realm. And then there's just the part where video chats are a disaster compared to a physical table, because there's no nonverbal, there's very little body language, which, you know, you see I'm using a lot of it. There's a lot of hard times reading people, and you know, you can't do an eyebrow so much, and you definitely can't do an aside. You can't talk to one person at the table or help one player along with part of their character sheet they might not be understanding, or mechanics, either as a fellow player or the GM, while other people get on with the business of the game. Like at a face-to-face table, one of the things I really enjoy kind of happening is helping walk someone through their casting their first spell. And I'm hearing in the background, you know, in my ideal dream game, I'm hearing people role play in character and discuss and weigh options as this person's, you know, coming up to speed with the basic nuts and bolts of the game. I'm also hearing and experiencing the world continues to live as the GM. I get to hear the world live on in the players' minds. And boy, the world just stops, grinds to a halt every time somebody has any kind of rules questions or asides or anything in the virtual tabletop realm. And that's a bummer. Not the virtual tabletop realm, the video call realm. It's a bummer, and it's cross purposes to how I like to work. And latency is another issue. I like to go back and forth, ask a lot of questions, answer a lot of questions, and, you know, say like, is there a door? Yes. I knock on it. It sounds empty. Okay, I open the door. The room is dark. Okay, I throw my sunrod into the room. Okay, the shadows cast across a lab table and glassware, etc. You know, and we go quickly through these things. And you get to experience choice making, and you get to experience not only just hidden information, but information being revealed. And you get to be much more responsive, in my experience, as a player, if you have that more rapid fire exchange. And also other players get to get in on it. And in video chats, it's much the opposite, because people just speak in paragraphs, and it's very hard as a player to interact with other players while they're doing their thing, other than by grandstanding and basically stealing their airtime or cracking jokes, you know, and taking the breath out of what they're doing. This video is not about people who do that sort of thing. Thankfully, I haven't had to play with many of them, but some friends have, and I'm sorry for that. So what did I do? What was I thinking could cure this? Well, I thought, well, maybe people who stream their game and have a streaming show, might be the right fit for me. I could bring my audience along with the channel. I could bring my expertise and sort of like my thought leadership or my personality status as someone for Star Trek Adventures, for example. So, you know, I have something to sell and something to give to people. And I was hoping that these folks who have a show and, you know, really want the show to go on and might feel more beholden to actually get the cameras rolling and make sure that game time happens at game time. My big goal. Maybe that would be the right choice. Well, here's what happened, and here's why I stopped trying to find any games. This was at the time of kind of peak diversity statements. You know, you see a white male in front of you. There are diversity things about me. I'm a neurodiverse person. I'm very bisexual in a very purple, non-conforming sort of way. But you don't see those things. And so the few people that I approached and I started talking to about joining their show, I did not have anything to pack their lineup with. I did not bring anything visually to the table as far as having a diverse cast of characters. I understand the motivations for that as a first precept of why you're choosing people, but it still hurts to be on the outside and to not have anybody to play with. Listen, I know that these shows belong to other people, and like I'm being turned away from a show that this person owned or whatever, and that's their business. But at the same time, I do support those values. I do think that this is a hobby that should really include and represent the interests and sort of optics, and even like it would be nice to see more cultures and perspectives in the games themselves and in the kinds of characters too. And people who say otherwise can fuck right off. Like this hobby should grow and be more diverse and add more people. Finally, like there was a little bit of flagging faith at this point in folks like my audience. I make lore videos. I make more involved stuff about settings and so on. Harn, Traveler, Star Trek Adventures. I talked about the transporter, and I really tried to unpack how the transporter would work at the tabletop and think about how to do that. And these communities for the various respective games, like I'll go around to subreddits or groups and just generally see discussions about these games, and it's really discouraging to see that nobody really ever posts my stuff. And the people in those groups, like if they're not big YouTube hounds, they don't scroll through everything. You might not know that somebody was making content about your game. Kind of a bummer to see that, my work, while occasionally appreciated by the communities, I do want to give credit to the fella who runs Shield of Tomorrow, that streamed game Once Upon a Time, which I think was on the Geek and Sundry channel, Star Trek Adventures game. He did occasionally give me a shout out because I helped him understand some parts of the rules, and cool, thanks, man. It never went beyond that, and more importantly, I never actually got into the in-crowd with 2Die20 system. I never actually talked to developers, became a developer. I really never speak to industry people, and the social media managers for most of these brands, Chaosium, Modifius, and so on. Boy, I see them shout out reviews and videos of, a different effort class and frankly a more casual stance, and they shout out stuff, and my stuff is never mentioned. Maybe that's because my search rank is the highest or something sometimes. I don't think that anymore, but I've definitely helped some of those games grow. And in the case of Star Trek Adventures, I think I helped make the first edition like playable for a great many people, because the rulebook did not do a good job of explaining itself. And I added that, frankly, to what was not there. Not in a really smug way or anything, but it would be nice to at least see that become something. It didn't. One thing that happens is I'm often accused of being a fake, that I didn't do any research for a video. Even when I have the citations, literal chapter and verse on the screen, people have said, no, you didn't actually look this up in the old D&D. You don't really know this. And like, I did. I looked it up. I've held up my Holmes Basic Set box set, the box for it. I've held it up in some videos, and people say, oh no, you just printed that out. You bought that on eBay, but like anybody can get that. Doesn't make you for real. Yeah, okay. Well, I mean, I spent a year playing BX with Aloy and the group, and that was great. We had some good times with that. And so here we are. And what can we take away from these lessons? I don't know if I'm going to post again. If you want to try and get my watch time back above the threshold, like, thanks, I guess. Maybe I'll start posting more stuff, but I need to be playing. If you've got a game that you do every week, and it happens after my kid's bedtime, and so on. I'd love to drop in maybe. Uh, but the mechanisms for getting folks back to the hobby, for getting folks to the table outside of like the normal social dynamics, they're really lapsed, frankly. I think that we have really lapsed in our ability to sustain people outside of like their normal social interactions. The FLGS, like Roll20 is an absolute mess as far as like they want you to apply for games and you want to prove your worthiness. There's no meet and greet. There's no mixers. There's no like, hey, just chat with me, like contact me and chat. Like that's not the culture of things. It's all about trying to, it's another Hunger Games death match in the Coliseum. You got to go fight in the Coliseum and get the lion in order to earn your place at a table. That's the optics. Unless you have some other friends and you're a young person and you have lots of time on your hands. So none of that's great. And I think we have a lot of improving to do in the hobby. I think the hobby will continue. It'll grow out of this doldrums that it's in as the botched launch of 6e D&D and generally people's ennui with 5e is culminated. You got to make a good game now. It's back to that. And that's cool. Like we're growing from some of the lessons. And that's good. But I am in a state of doubt about whether I'm going to stop being an imposter ever again. Whether I'm ever going to be in a place to really talk to you like I used to as a person knowledgeable and a person who was growing, facing challenges and trying to grow past those challenges, sharing my thoughts about how I had grown past challenges. It's not like I forgot everything that I know, and we could have a 3.x nostalgia core nonstop if you want on this channel. But it all takes time, and it's got to pay some of its own way in some way. Maybe that means I meet people. Maybe it means that it actually we get back on the partner program and we make some money. Maybe it means that I'm in a place where I can have a Kickstarter and I can sell you guys something that I made that's pretty cool. But I never get more than the 350 views in the first 48 hours for my average videos where I'm being a YouTube talking head, a pundit. And that looks like that's going in the wrong direction, even as I've tried to refine my stage presence, even as I've added elements like a B camera to my videos. So the reach and the ability to meet new people using this platform is diminishing, I think, and as many more people are passive users that don't leave comments and maybe never subscribe to channels and much fewer times go back and check on a channel if the algorithm doesn't push the video to them. So let me know how you're doing in 2025 with the hobby and which things are bright spots. Things don't look so good from where I am. And, maybe I'll make another video on this channel one day. But without those, few dollars and cents every time I make something new, I don't know that's going to happen. But I'll see you later.